Before we begin, I have to say that I'm sure my shirt is going to be distracting with Marcus here looking at you guys. I don't know how many of you watch the Marcus videos, but I freaking love those things. So I got this shirt, but I'm like, oh, it probably wasn't the best thing to wear for this review, but fuck it. I'm gonna continue with it anyway. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen of the internet. Jan Michael here. Well, here we are once again with another online shooter game nominated for Game of the Year. And you guys know me and how I feel about this genre of game. I mean, just take a look at my review of Helldivers 2 last year as an example. I'm not the biggest fan. However, there is one big difference of my experience here versus Helldivers 2, and that is that my friends actually played Arc Raiders. And so I was able to go through a majority of my experience with them. And so does that change my idea and conception about how fun these games can be? Well, let's go ahead and dive into Arc Raiders to find out.
They said the world above had ended. But endings are only for those who forgot how to begin again. So you learn to listen, to move quiet.
Arc Raiders' concept is actually pretty simple to summarize. Robots, or arcs in this case, have gone insane. Humanity is pushed underground, but need to go to the surface to scrounge for supplies, and must fend off and destroy these arcs for parts, as well as other raiders who decide it's easier to take you down and steal your supplies rather than deal with the arcs themselves. Thus, the title Arc Raider comes into play. Yet, while the concept is simple to speak about, the nuances of the gameplay can get pretty complex unless you're diving in with someone who knows what they're doing. Or at least you'll be starting off pretty slow as you get your bearings, which I feel seems to be the case with a lot of these online shooter type games. For the first few hours, my experience was essentially just scrounging around for any loot I found, fucking off out of there before other players decided to shoot at me, and then just rinsing and repeating until I kind of got an idea of what other activities there were to do. You do get missions throughout the game, and while these start off incredibly simple, like anybody could just do these early missions, they do start to grow in complexity. And unless you know exactly what you're doing, or you look up the answers to what it is that you're supposed to do, there is a very good chance you're gonna end up lost with a lot of the jargon that they throw at you. After a while, I actually hooked up with my friends who had already been playing the game for some time, played a few rounds with them, and then holy smokes, like we zoomed through it all. Like it was incredible, the difference between playing by yourself and versus playing what your teammates. It's just like you're able to help each other. Even if they kill a robot that you're supposed to kill, you still get the credit for it as well. So yeah, you're gonna zoom through those missions as long as you're playing with the party. And that's actually kind of cool to do, especially if you're struggling on where to go next or what your objective truly is. This is really where the game takes shape, as teaming up creates an incredibly fun atmosphere where you're not entirely scared to bump into something or someone who has it out for you. You've got backup, and if you fall, hope isn't lost. It's also tons of fun to encounter something that you as a team can't really take down, but you still come up with clever ways to chip away at the enemy until you manage to overcome it. It's awesome. It's a lot of fun, and I'll admit, it made me think back on my review of Helldivers 2 and contemplate that if my friends also played along with me, would I have been more lenient with the review and the score? Well, maybe, but ultimately, my bias on these type of games is still here. If you're looking for some sort of epic story, you're not gonna get it. The basic concept is interesting enough, but you're really not gonna get any progression past that initial conception, because you can't. There's gonna be illusions of things getting better, but really everything's gonna stay the same because this is an online experience. They can't change anything because it fundamentally would be different for everyone. So yeah, there's only so much you can do with that, and that's just not the type of experience that I personally like as a gamer. This is no fault of the game itself. There's many people who love these type of experiences. But I love some finality to my work. I want there to be progress. I don't just want to tick away at a checkbox list of things and really get nothing out of the experience in a story setting, if you will. So if that's what you're looking for, you're gonna be like me, and you're probably gonna walk away going, yeah, that was fun, but ultimately, what did I get out of it? Not a whole lot. But if story doesn't matter to you, you just want a fun online game to play with friends, you will definitely get that here. Solo, it'll depend on how deeply you want to dig into it, but with friends, most definitely you'll have fun. One of the coolest things I found in playing Arc Raiders was in the community. Online games can live and die based on how the community functions. It could be toxic, especially to new players. It could be welcoming, or it could just be bland, with no one really interacting with one another. And Arc Raiders really is a great combination of all these things. Like, even when I didn't have my mic plugged in and was keeping to myself, there were times people would just come up to me, communicate however they could, asking me for help, or they wanted to assist me in what I was doing. There were plenty of people that kept to themselves, only making it known they were not hostile, which proved to be true a majority of the time that I encountered that. But yes, there are also those bastards that shoot on sight, or worse, pretend to be friendly only to backstab you when you least expect it. Now, I really say that last thing with a smile on my face because I found myself having fun even when people were being complete and total jerks, especially when you're playing in a squad, because again, just because you get dropped doesn't mean you're not gonna get some revenge. Your teammates can still pick you up. You can regroup, kind of go at it from a different angle, really take that other squad down, and you get some sweet loot out of it, unless, you know, they came in bare bones and were just looking for a fight. Again, even when people were being jerks, I just had so much fun with it. Now, when you're alone again, your enjoyment may vary, especially if you're going in looking for some high-level loot. It is very frustrating to get something really cool only to get dropped, especially when you're right towards the end, and get all your stuff stolen. So in that regards, I do think playing with the team is going to be a lot less stress-inducing because you always have a chance to come back. But for me personally, again, even when they were jerks, I had fun, and I was the type that liked to get into character, so I like to kind of role play my experiences when I was getting shot, when people were backstabbing me, when people were just being friendly. Not that that would always save me when they just wanted to kill me, but you know, I enjoyed my experience enough that I was willing to kind of commit to those roles. And it was all done in a very seamless online experience. Like, I really didn't suffer any sort of hiccups in my connection. There was one time that I had slight lag, and it wasn't even enough to ruin my run. I was still able to complete everything I needed to during my time with that lag. So kudos to the developers for keeping things going to such a degree. A lot of the audio here is exactly what you would expect from this type of experience. Gunfire, explosions, sci-fi, techie sounds, you know exactly what you're gonna get. However, there are two areas where I truly do feel the audio goes above and beyond what you would typically hear in an online shooter. First is the proximity chat, which, yes, it isn't anything new, but it is important in how you play the game. There's a lot of danger out in the world, including other people. And you being able to listen and pick up on these sounds is incredibly important to survival. So when you're constantly on the lookout for certain sounds, you tend to be reliant on the subtleties of the audio. However, truly where the sound and audio design go above and beyond is in these sounds that these arcs make, especially the fucking shredder. I remember when I first heard that thing, it actually freaked me out. And even worse, because we actually bumped into 3 at the same time. So it was like you escaped from one, and then you would hear another one going off, and you're like, oh my god, this is a fucking nightmare. So well done for them crafting these very disturbing noises. It's something where I'm always going to remember that experience, and I have to give them huge props for something that I still just randomly think about and talk to my fellow squad mates about. So thus far, I've been pretty positive on my Arc Raiders experience, especially when playing with teammates. However, here is really where I have to start being a bit more critical, especially in the central gameplay design. Now, don't get me wrong, the actual design itself, I think, is interesting enough. You go out, you get high-level loot, you come back, you go out with that high-level loot to try to find even better high-level loot or fulfill a request that requires you to use that better loot in order to complete the request. You rinse and repeat, so on and so forth, and there's always the danger that you could get taken out by an enemy or another player and robbed. So there's this very intense atmosphere about. I get why that is such a high point to the game that people really want to interact with. However, I'm gonna be honest, I don't think it's a design that's implemented all that well. I very rarely found myself needing to take with me higher powered loot that I cared about, unless it was to do something very specific, like kill a certain arc that I knew was going to take more firepower, or if I wanted to go out hunting for other players. Most of the time, I was fine with the basic loadout and was honestly less frustrated with the experience when I ultimately died or was killed by someone else. And given how maddening it can be to lose some of your best gear due to some unforeseen circumstances, I just never thought it was worth it to carry the best things on me at all times. So when you get rid of that mechanic, what are you left with? Like, you're actively finding ways to circumnavigate the central, like, anxiety-inducing mechanic that the game is presenting to you. Is that a good mechanic then? And I know you're gonna say, well, the further along you get in the game, you're gonna need to take that higher powered loot. And yes, when you get to the later missions, you're definitely gonna wanna have the best gear. And when you're going after players, you're gonna wanna have the best gear. Otherwise, you're most likely not taking anyone down. But I very rarely, as I said, found myself needing to take that risk. I was completely fine going in with a basic loadout, scoping things out, and if I could cheese it, I would cheese it. I would rather do that than risk my best stuff. So again, when you're actively finding ways to circumnavigate the central mechanic because it's too, anxiety inducing, or it's like bullshit to lose hours of progress, is that mechanic really all that good? This is a question you have to answer yourself. For me, I still had fun, but I ain't no way I was risking my best stuff, and thus I wasn't using that best stuff, and thus, again, it all just it's a house of cards. It kind of comes tumbling down when you start to go through this line of thought. But take that for what you will. Everyone's going to be different in this regard. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really see what was so technically impressive about the game during my playtime with it. In fact, I was so confused about this nomination that I actually started looking up what people were saying about the technical advancements that warranted this. And from what I understand, the number one thing most people are really praising about it is that its AI learns from your actions. So depending on what you're doing, it switches up its strategy to find ways to get at you. Does it? Look, maybe I'm missing something, and please let me know in the comments below if I'm just a fucking idiot here, but I never saw them do anything that made me go, oh shit, they're swapping up, we gotta change strategies, they're adapting, they're getting smarter. I never saw that. Like, the most complex thing I ever saw any of these arcs do is hide when you took shots at them from like an area they couldn't get to. And even then, when you're on a team and you can get to multiple areas, that kind of, it like completely whelms them and they just don't know what to do, from my experience anyway. In fact, when I first started playing, I was actually incredibly cautious because I heard these things were so dangerous. I thought the flying things would definitely zoop into a building and take you down. And no, like a lot of the times they had no idea what to do, so they kept like hitting into the walls, getting stuck in doorways or sometimes the environment, and I was able to take them out pretty easily. That doesn't mean they're not dangerous, they still are. Like, don't let your guard down, especially when there's more than like 2 or 3 of the fuckers. But yeah, I never was so intimidated by the AI that I was like mind blown. But again, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I missed something, but I don't remember having conversations with my friends where like, oh shit, this thing's too smart, we gotta change up our strategy. So yeah, on that end, I don't think this nomination is warranted like at all. So does Arc Raiders have a shot at winning Game of the Year? Nope. Sorry, but there's just too many variables working against it. Plus, there are other things to keep in mind, like the whole AI thing where they use that technology to do some of the voice lines in the game. Like, you know how people are with AI, and rightfully so, so that's gonna hurt it. I mean, the horrible microtransaction prices are like, holy shit. Like, that's nefarious, especially when you're paying $40+ for a game. So that already puts a bad taste into my mouth. There's also like a rise in cheaters recently where they really needed to start like focusing on like getting rid of that community just because it was getting so bad. There's also not a lot of like content after the game launched. I mean, it's pretty much dried up, and if you've already kind of done everything the game has to offer, there's very little reason to go back into it. I'll give this to Helldivers 2. They kept it going right after launch with things constantly coming out for it. Just Arc Raiders doesn't seem to be on that same trajectory. I mean, I know they have things planned for the future, but as of right now, as of this recording right now, it hasn't really done anything. So I gotta take that into consideration as well. But all that being said, just the game alone is a lot of fun. And if you've not played it whatsoever, you're going to have a good time, especially when going through it with friends. Again, solo, everybody's mileage is going to vary, but with friends, it's definitely a blast. Anyways, Arc Raiders managed to raid its way into my heart, so I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5 with a recommendation to play it. If your tastes line up with mine, but you've got friends to get you through the experience, you're going to have a good time. If you don't have friends or they don't play Arc Raiders and you're too shy to team up with strangers, and there's still fun things to be done solo, but it's definitely going to take you longer to get there. Ultimately, you'll need to experience it for yourself to know where you lie, but I found my time with it to be well worth the dangers. And there we have it, guys. The first review of 5 done. Let me know what you guys think of Arc Raiders. I know some people weren't too happy with the Helldivers 2 review, and some people were actually pretty cool. So hey, there's that. So will people be cool? Will they, Marcus? Will they? Probably not. Anyways, until tomorrow, everybody. Like always, stay safe out there and have a good one.